Hi, my little grandchildren. Today we're going to read Brave Brush-tailed Possum by Diane Redfield Massey. It's about a little possum. My children, your mommies and daddies, read this book when they were little. There he is right there. That's the possum. Okay, here we go. Brush-tailed Possum lived in the jungle high in the green genup tree. He slept each day curled up in a ball in his leafy tree fern bed. But at night, when the stars were out, Possum was awake. He watched the moon glide up through the trees, lighting the leaves below. There's the moon. There's the possum. "I'm not afraid of the dark," said Possum. "That's because I'm so brave." He stared at the pale hanging vines and shivered. The moonlight seemed to move on the leaves. He wished he were snug in his bed. There he is. Gray Wombat was digging far below for roots under the ferns. "I'm very brave," said Possum. "I'm as brave as a wombat is." "Oh, no, you're not," said Wombat. He pulled up a genup tree root and ate it. "I'm as brave as a spiny anteater, then," said Possum. "Says who?" said the spiny anteater, poking her nose through the bushes. "Well, at least I'm as brave as Koala Bear," whispered Possum. He bit into a genup and sucked the sweet, sticky fruit out of its case. The shells fell into the vines below. Koala Bear sat high in the eucalyptus tree. His fur looked silver in the moonlight. "Yoo-hoo!" he called. "I'm eating leaves." Possum watched the branches sway gently in the breeze. The moon was behind them, big and white. "I'd probably be the bravest of all," he said, "if it weren't for the goanna lizard." His pale orange eyes grew large. "If I ever see him face to face," he whispered, "I'll freeze." "Sneeze?" asked Koala Bear. His mouth was full of leaves. "He said freeze," called Wombat, looking up. "When he freezes, he means he can't move. You know, he just stands there shaking with fright." "Really?" says Koala Bear. He reached for another branch and pulled the tender leaves toward him. "Why doesn't he run and jump like I do?" he asked. "It's easy to get away." "I can't," said Possum. "Possums can't jump." "Why don't you dig yourself into the ground like we do?" asked Wombat. "I'm covered up in 3 seconds." "Me too," said Spiny Anteater. I don't have paws like you have," sighed Possum. "I can't dig." "Well, you can't just stand there," said Wombat. "Yes, I can," sighed Possum. "But you'll be eaten," said Spiny Anteater. "I know," said Possum. "Don't you care if you're eaten?" demanded Wombat. "Yes," said Possum, "but I haven't any choice. I'll freeze," he said, "because that's what possums always do." "That's terrible," cried Koala Bear. He slid down the tree to a nearby branch. "My cousin froze," continued Possum. "My cousins were eaten." "Possum," said Wombat. "Possum, you said you were brave." "I am," said Possum, "except for goannas." "Being brave means you don't just give up," said Wombat. He scattered dirt with his big gray feet. It sprinkled over his back. "But my uncles and aunts," said Possum. "They were eaten, and my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother, they were also eaten." "Never mind," said Wombat. He turned around and pushed through the ferns. If he won't even try to save himself," he said, "there's nothing we can do." "Oh dear," sighed Spiny Anteater. Her quills hung limply down. Koala Bear climbed slowly up the eucalyptus tree. Somehow he wasn't hungry anymore. Possum sat thinking alone in his tree. The moon had scattered small patches of light on the leaves like lizard scales. The goanna scales were white and black, and his eyes, thought Possum, were gold, cold, shining eyes, ringed in gold. Possum stood still on the giant tree branch. He had frozen again. The warm morning sun woke Koala Bear. He was feeling hungry. "Hello, Possum," he called, chewing his favorite leaves. The giant tree was empty. He could see Spiny Anteater below, looking for ants for breakfast. "Where's Possum?" he called. "I don't know," said Spiny Anteater. Wombat looked out of his burrow. He rubbed his furry nose and shook the dust from his whiskers. "Where's Possum?" he asked. They stared at Possum's empty bed. The giant tree leaves rustled softly, making an empty sound. "You don't suppose," said Spiny Anteater. She covered her eyes with her claws. "You don't think the goanna lizard has eaten Possum?" "We would have seen the goanna," said Wombat. "Maybe not," said Koala Bear. "The goanna lizard is very large, but he creeps so quietly over the branches." "Possum's been eaten," cried Spiny Anteater. "I know it. Oh, poor Possum." Tears ran down her pointed nose and splashed on her quills beneath. "He was a good friend," she sobbed. "He was the best." "He was the best friend," said Wombat, blowing his nose. "Well, he wasn't very brave," said Koala Bear, "but he was nice." "I am too brave," said Possum, coming out of the bushes. "Possum!" cried Spiny Anteater. "We thought you'd been eaten." "Eaten?" said Possum. "What are you doing down there on the ground?" asked Koala Bear. "Making something," said Possum. He dragged some dried banana leaves out of the grass. "What are you making?" asked Spiny Anteater. "You'll see," said Possum. He spread the banana leaves on the ground. They looked as dry and brown as his fur. "Now," said Possum, "for the feeling," and he disappeared again through the vines. "What do you suppose he's making?" asked Spiny Anteater. "Got me," said Wombat. "What do you think he needs those old banana leaves for?" asked Spiny Anteater, shaking her quills. "How should I know?" said Wombat. He felt cross. Spiny Anteater was always asking questions for which he had no answers. "What's he doing now?" asked Spiny Anteater. Possum backed out of the weeds. He was carrying a large bundle of something. "What's that, Possum?" Spiny Anteater stood up on tip claws to see. "Skunk cabbages, bitter berries, stink bugs, and mud," said Possum. "Skunk cabbages smell terrible," said Spiny Anteater. "Bitter berries," said Koala Bear. "They make me sick." "Stink bugs," said Wombat. "Ew!" Possum dropped his bundle on the banana leaves. Then he rolled it over and over. "Will you help me tie the ends?" he asked. Koala Bear found 2 strong vines. He helped Possum tie the ends. There, said Possum, it's almost done. But what is it? Asked Spiny Anteater. It looks like a sausage. It's not a sausage, said Possum. He dragged the stuffed banana leaves to the bottom of his tree. When I'm finished with it, he said, you'll know what it is. He pulled it slowly up the tree to his branch and disappeared behind the leaves. Spiny Anteater looked at Wombat. What do you think it's for? She asked. By late evening, Possum was out on his branch. He had found some gennips for his supper. Yoo-hoo, Possum, called Koala Bear. Possum could see Wombat and Spiny Anteater below. They were waiting next to his tree. I finished it, he called. I'll bring it out. I can hardly wait, said Spiny Anteater. Possum brought out his stuffed banana leaves. He propped it against the tree. 2 eyes and nose had been drawn near the top, and straws poked out beneath them. What is it? Asked Wombat. Can't you tell? Said Possum. No, said Wombat. It's a sausage, said Spiny Anteater. It's not a sausage, shouted Possum. He sat on the jennip tree branch and held his head in his paws. It's no use, he said. Koala Bear slid down his tree. Possum, he said kindly, tell us what you've made. It's a dummy, said Possum. It's a possum dummy. Tears ran down his whiskers. But it won't fool Iguana, he sighed. He'll know it isn't me. Possum, said Koala Bear, you were trying to save yourself. That's very brave. It won't work, said Possum. So what does it matter? I'll be eaten like all the other possums. No, you won't, said Spiny Anteater. It's a good dummy. It looks just like you, Possum. No, it doesn't, said Possum. At night it will, said Wombat. What are those things sticking out supposed to be? Whiskers, said Possum sadly. They look just like whiskers, said Spiny Anteater. They really do. I was going to set it out if the goanna comes, sighed Possum, and hide behind the leaves. Well, that's a good idea, said Koala Bear. I'd like to see his face when he bites into that. Ugh! Do you think he might think it's me? Possum blew his nose. It's worth a chance, said Koala Bear. It's better than freezing. If I look at his eyes, I might freeze anyway, said Possum. Don't look at his eyes, said Koala Bear. The stars had begun to scatter themselves about the darkening sky. Koala Bear had climbed up to his perch, and Wombat and Spiny Anteater were somewhere else, out of sight. Safe in the bushes, thought Possum. He sat on his branch and sucked on a jennip seed, watching the silver moon. The goanna lizard crawled slowly through the trees. His pale white scales, patched with black, matched the moonlit leaves. I shall have possum dinner, he said, flicking his purple tongue. Yum, yum, yum. Possum dropped his gennep seed. "It's the goanna," he whispered. He thought of the goanna's golden eyes and felt himself turn cold. I mustn't freeze. The goanna lizard crawled through the vines. He stopped at Possum's tree. "Aha!" he wheezed. "Dinner time!" And he crawled onto Possum's branch. Possum could barely move. "Yah, you flabby lizard!" yelled Wombat from below. The goanna lizard turned to stare. Possum stumbled behind the leaves. He pushed his dummy out. The goanna blinked and turned around again. He opened his skelly jaws. Snap, crunch, his jaws chewed up and down. "Gah!" he roared. "That was positively ghastly, horrible, sickening, the worst dinner I've ever eaten." He shook his tail and shuddered. "That is the last possum I will ever eat," he bellowed, and he crawled away through the vines. Possum sat down on his branch. "You did it!" yelled Spiny Anteater, dancing through the grass. "Yay for Possum!" shouted Koala Bear. He threw his eucalyptus leaves in the air and slid down his tree. Possum smiled. "Thanks for helping me, Wombat," he said. "That's okay," said Wombat, chewing on a gennep tree root. "You didn't give up, even though you were scared, and that was very brave." "He's as brave as I am," said Koala Bear. "You're right," Possum said. "I am." The end. Bye. Stay tuned for the next story for Mimi's Story Time.